I'm really happy to have Bryan Kinghorn with me today to be able to talk about his approach to landscape. So Bryan, your company is really unique and has been unique from the start. Do you want to describe a little bit about why you decided to do that and what that approach is?
Well, I think we're strong in regards to sense of place and the development of that sense of place to actually mean something and to deliver a quality of life to the people or client or project that we interact with. And so when you sort of take it from that perspective and you draw inspiration from the site and you start to actually create spaces that have meaning and value to either the project, the place, or whatever the programming statement might be, you end up with a result that is purposeful, it's intentional, and it meets environmental needs, it meets maintenance capacity. So there's a lot of added benefits attached to the approach that we try to take.
So let's talk a little bit then about perhaps a small typical residential project that you have approached differently. Describe that for our audience.
Well, the first thing we're going to try to do is make sure that we meet a couple of the human aspects. And all the research and data indicates that there's two things that keep people from going outside. And those two things generally relate to it's too hot out there. That's one component. And the other one is it's too windy out there. So those, if we can, we're going to address the environmental concerns first in regards to the hot component and the wind component. And we're going to try to create spaces and places that people want to actually be in, and maybe extend their interaction with the outdoors. Maybe our goal or objective should be to try to get them outside 10 days earlier in the spring and 10 to 15 or 20 days longer in the fall, and create spaces where their length of time outdoors can be longer and more enjoyable, and it becomes maybe an extension of their home. It's not a to-do thing. It's something to interact with and be part of. And where I think we're naturally inclined, you know, it's part of one of the great plots in literature that it's man versus nature. Try to have a conversation with one of us about us being part of nature, you know, and that's a different conversation because we constantly fight how we can be part of nature. We're always trying to control it.
How about an example of a project that is commercial or public or has really interesting elements of sustainability or natural or native environments in it?
There's more and more excitement right now about how you deal with what we consider to be negative space in the landscape. So the negative space historically or traditionally is taken up by an element of turf. And turf performs a great role in regards to, you know, occupying that negative space. But some people right now are asking for things that maybe aren't turf related. They could be meadows or glades or woodlands or prairie. Now these are not exact replications of nature. These are abstract interpretations of nature, so that maybe they could end up with a negative space that directly relates to what they really want to look at. You know, because sometimes people are afraid or fearful of looseness and wildness. But we can actually take the plant material in the communities and the people that we have on board and the site and the desires and the programming statements, and we can create spaces that people truly want to look at that are dual purpose. Okay, so dual purpose meaning it's not just pretty and it's not just performing the function, but it also helps with other things that we need to be aware of. Now, our landscapes have to be more than just fashion shows. And so they have to be responsive to habitat, they have to be responsive to pollinators, they have to be responsive to your needs as a family or as a company or as a city. They have to be aware of, they have to be water-wise, they have to be sensitive to that. You have to explain to us what your true maintenance capacity really is, and that has to coexist with the design program. So that's how we would approach it. And so that you would end up with spaces, again, that are attractive to look at. Let's say we have a meadow that you visually find interesting and it changes every 2 to 3 weeks. It has some patterning to it. It has some plant communities to it that relate to one another. We stretch the ideas, you know. I think people are more and more trying to figure out how they can participate in being good stewards of their own properties, of their own cities, and how we care for our landscapes, our neighborhoods, our environment.
Bryan, you've added a head of horticulture to your business. That is also really unique. Do you want to describe why?
Well, maintenance capacity is critical, and it's one of those things that isn't all that sexy to talk about, you know, because who wants to talk about care or maintenance? And in fact, the term maintenance itself doesn't really excite people too much. But when we can really drill down to what a client's true maintenance capacity actually is, then we can start to design landscapes that will be able to meet that. So it's not one of these patronizing approaches anymore about, oh yeah, sure, don't worry about it, it'll be low maintenance. No, we're serious about what this looks like and how it coexists with the design process. So we have a head of horticulture now that's what they look at, and that's what they evaluate, and that's what they consider. And we have landscape architects and designers that start to really consider, well, what does this mean in regards to upkeep and care and inputs? And we can match maintenance capacity with outcome. We now have an understanding about how to do that, and it's not as complicated as one might think. The complicated part is for us to get good, honest information up front about what your inputs are actually going to be, and so we can match those if we have good dialogue and information that we can harvest.
Bryan, that's really exciting to think about into the future. I want to thank you an awful lot for coming down today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.